Today on History's Tech, we are looking at the English Electric Canberra. This rather unique 1940s jet bomber was the first jet bomber produced for the Royal Air Force. Now, this World War II bomber boasts a rather impressive record, only being retired from service in 2007, with variants of this aircraft still serving to this day. But let's go ahead and look at the Canberra. Now, the story of the Canberra actually starts with this aircraft, the de Havilland Mosquito. In 1944, the Air Ministry required a successor for the de Havilland Mosquito fast bomber. Basically, they wanted a new high-speed, high-altitude bomber that could replace the Mosquito. And really, the big problem with the Mosquito was that it was a wooden bomber, and they wanted an all-metal bomber instead. Now, because of the development of the jet engine, it was basically decided that this new bomber would be equipped with one of the newly developed jet engines. Now, utilizing these engines, they decided to go ahead and develop a twin-engine bomber. Now, they did go with some decision-making. They had to decide whether they were going to use swept wings or a swept tail. And overall, they kind of went with a design that they were familiar with, one that they knew would work. Now, the order for the first 4 prototypes was actually put in 1946, but there was a lot of problems during development. They had issues in developing the actual aircraft. They had issues with developing the nose, the landing gears, the glazing for the windows. All kinds of things led to development delays, and it wasn't until 1949 that the first prototype was even finished. But even with all of these development delays, when they actually were able to flight test the aircraft, they found it to have very few problems, and most of them were easy to fix. By January of 1951, the first squadrons were equipped with the Canberra B.2 model. And with the outbreak of the Korean War, production of the aircraft actually accelerated. By 1952, they had replaced a large portion of the Mosquito's Lincoln and Washington bombers and became the frontline bomber for the Royal Air Force. And they were extremely popular bombers, as they could actually outperform most jet aircraft of that early era in both speed and maneuverability, making them extremely popular with foreign services. And it's about this time we'll see one of the popular variants of the Canberra appear, and that's the photo reconnaissance variant. And this aircraft was extremely popular for photo reconnaissance until it was replaced by the U-2. Now, with the development of the Vickers Valiant, the story of the Canberra could have ended right there in the mid-1950s. However, it wasn't the end. The role of the aircraft as a conventional bomber was phased out, and instead it was turned into a low-level strike and ground attack aircraft. And the aircraft would go on to have further roles. It would be utilized in atmospheric testing for both the weather and nuclear samplings after nuclear testing. It would actually be developed into a tactical nuclear strike weapon, being utilized as a low-altitude bomber for nuclear weapons. Now, they were officially retired from their frontline service and bombing roles and ground attack roles by the 1970s and went mostly to a reconnaissance role, being utilized from everything from monitoring the German border to being used in the Bosnian and Kosovo wars. Now, they would be additionally used by multiple other services, including the Royal Australian Air Force, the Chilean Air Force, the Indian Air Force, the French Air Force, amongst quite a few others. And because of this, they would see service until the 2000s, with the Indian Air Force retiring their last Canberras in 2007. And in addition to their strict military service, they were actually used quite a bit as a test bed for new engines that would be utilized in both military and civilian applications. They were also utilized for the development and testing of different types of radar. They were even modified to be used as water spray tankers for de-icing trials. And there was even an attempt to use one for artificial cloud generation. Now, because of the versatility and incredibly long lifespan of the aircraft and the airframe, the aircraft has more than 40 variants. Now, many of these variants are what we've traditionally seen. These are improvements to avionics or engines. However, there are a few unique ones. One of my personal favorites is the BI-8 model, which basically is the version that was designed for the ground attack bombing. It was fitted with 4 Hispano 20mm cannons, hard points underneath the wings for rockets, and this is the one that was designed for that low-altitude bombing system to deliver nuclear bombs. Another unique variant would be the Shorts models, modified by the Shorts Corporation. And basically, these were designed to fire missiles for testing. Some of these were missiles that were being tested to be targeted, others were just basically new missiles being developed. But the most famous variant is probably the Martin B-57, which was a license-built version of the English Electric Canberra, built by the Glenn L. Martin Company, that was essentially an almost 100% identical copy of the aircraft until the later variants utilized completely domestic-built components and then were continuously modified. Now, because of the lifespan of service for this aircraft, the fact that it was exported to so many different countries, they can be found on display in Europe, North America, South America, Africa, Asia, and Australia. And there are actually 10 airframes that are in private hands that are actually airworthy and fly occasionally around the world. But there you have it, a look at the English Electric Canberra, the first jet-powered bomber in the Royal Air Force's inventory, an aircraft that was developed in the 1940s, finally flew by the end of the 40s, had a pretty good service life until the 1970s as a bombing or attack aircraft, then was converted to a reconnaissance aircraft, but was still utilized by multiple other air forces as a bombing aircraft up until 2007. And current variants of it, including the B-57, still fly within government service to this day. But that's it for today. Thank you for joining me. I look forward to talking to you on the next time.